Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. The title is Relationship of Listening to the Invisible. But I want to focus on the relationship we have to just the idea that we are creatures that listen, and to the idea that we listen to thoughts, sounds, and these sounds, they are in some sense invisible externally, but internally they're visible. So I found that and noticed something very interesting, that how is it that I'm aware of my thoughts, but I can't touch them, I can't move them with my hands. Do you know, I can imagine an apple pie floating in the air, but I can't, take that apple pie and throw it at like a tree. Or something, whatever. Like, if you don't feel like eating apple. So there is this unique relationship to how we are immaterial, or how listening is an immaterial activity. And activity is not just a relationship between something that is physical and tangible, our thoughts, our mind. Right now, the idea you have of yourself, the idea you have of people, the idea you have on the world, this idea is something that you can't put that idea on the table. The idea is not in reality, or is in reality, So that's what I'm saying. It's like that. Right now I'm thinking of a castle. I don't see that castle. Do you see what I mean? I'm just suggesting that the inner realms have a difference in they are visible. Like literally, if there was a castle in front of me, okay, let's say there was a castle outside of my, let's say my neighbor had a castle. Whatever, I would see a castle in front of my eyes, and let's say I imagined that castle, I would visually see one with biological eyes, one with the mind's eye. So I would see both castles, the visualized castle and the castle that's in reality, but it's their tangibility. It's the tangibility that I can touch the castle in front of my eyes, but I can't touch the castle behind my eyes, but it is there. Do you see? So your imagination is like deviations from reality that are there. It's kind of like, I think we are literally at the gate of two worlds. In front of our eyes, objective reality. You gotta go follow the individual conscious programs of living to continue. But behind your eyes, you're not per se an individual. And you don't even remain as an individual. Behind your eyes in deep sleep, you're not a character in a story. And in dreams, you're a character in a very altered story. And in reality, you're a character in the same story, kind of. In 2013, before I went to the UK, before I started these talks, I was on this kind of writing spree. And I was just writing the same way I give these talks. It was like I was experiencing the same thing through words. Just writing, I would hold the pen, I would get a feeling, imagery would arise, and the hand would move in accordance to the imagery. So my inner realms, there's been times where I've written with the attention being on the outer realms and the attention being in the inner realms. Anyways, in 2013 I wrote a book, it is not out there. I'm trying to, by the end of this year, get all the books out. But the book is finished. It's just not published. It's called Ancient Listeners. I remember. Two books in the Mr. Within library. I mean, a bunch of books, but like two of them I wrote together. I would write the books in twos. So the Inventor's Sphere and the Ancient Listeners, I wrote those two books, literally one chapter of the other one, then one chapter of this one chapter of the other one chapter of this one. So in the Ancient Listeners, there's this idea that listening is a path to the true reality. So right now we think it's through speech. Look at all those people running to India. Look at all those people searching for truth in the words of that which is outside of them. In the book, The Ancient Listeners, I was sharing this idea that listening is more ancient. That we have listened and we have been just pure awareness before expression. You know what it is? It's like our minds were built first, then our bodies were built in our minds. And now the human being is wondering the separation of the mind from the whole cosmic activity. That is really the mystical question. In the Ancient Listeners, I had this idea that there were these ancient beings at the beginning of the foundation of any world, where they were the ears of the world. And those who were the ears of the world, they were the first beings who were given a collective responsibility over the administration of reality. When you look at consciousness, what do you notice, guys? Any being that becomes conscious, their ability and their response to the moment changes. So literally, they become, responsibility follows consciousness. You can't be a conscious being and then not after a while choose to administer. Most people, their consciousness is responsible for themselves. But after you've in some sense lived a life for yourself, lived a lifetime in your lifetime for yourself, then you will no longer need to, let me tell you this, imagine in one-tenth of your life, or 1/20th of your life, you lived a life completely for yourself. You saw it, you saw the weakness of the individual, and then you saw the strength of the individual, then you saw the transcendence of the individual, then you saw the ultimate destination of the individual. And I am telling you, those people who are trying to climb the mountain of self-enlightenment, you should definitely. Shira Monomar, she says, your own self-realization is the greatest service you can render unto the world. But after you have lived for yourself, you will wonder what a collective self means. And that's when these Mr. Within talks are for you. If you're a person who's going for individual kind of freedom as a sort of escapism from the confrontation of the suffering of reality, then these talks are not for you. I am literally, here's the thing, it's like the ancient yogis were like, get out of the cities and go into the mountains and find your true nature. I'm shouting, get out of the mountains and come into the city and discover your true nature. I feel that this thing that's going on, this civilization of ours, is no little thing. It's an effort of unfathomable amount of eyes looking at it. And so, listening, really, we think it's listening to the past. Alright guys, so in the chat section we have a comment. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Alfred. Welcome to the chat. You say I was born with no soul. Then you need to become friends with some musicians, Alfred. Let me tell you, what if one day you realize at the back, far depths of your mind, there wasn't a soul? What would happen if you realized that? If you realize the soul doesn't have a personality, for how endless could that game be? Can you imagine, like, the Buddha kind of getting enlightened from one reality, finding himself in another reality, then he's like, oh shit, I gotta get enlightened from this one too, and then and then it becomes this endless regression of enlightenment. I'm telling you, enlightenment is just realizing the light is in your eyes in an instant. It's an instantaneous acknowledgement that energy is conscious of itself unconditionally. You know? But interesting ideas. Yeah, guys, anybody listening to these talks, feel free to share in the chat section. Alright, let's get back to the talk before I yawn like Dawn. Listening is very crucial. Most of my life, I thought intelligence was a tool. Honestly, I'm not joking. When I would see people succeed, I felt they had something I didn't have. And then I realized years later that what they had was an attention to their own life's significance. They hadn't disconnected their outer life with their inner life. Let me tell you what's happening. Introverts in today's modern society are rebels of their inner realms. Extroverts, they are, in some sense, their outer realms define their inner realms. That means, I'm telling you, I thought about it for a second. I'm like, what if an enlightened alien came to me and said, all right, my real name is Amin, and was like, Amin, all right, you're not going to be Amin anymore, you're going to do this and this and this and this. And I thought in my mind, what if I listened and it was all perfect? But what would that mean? And I realized that listening is independence. That those who listen, they can hear separate from the sound. When I say we're reaching a point where the species needs to be aware of the language threshold, that means you need to be aware of thought and that you are not thought. If a thought sees that you think you're the thought will possess you. It's the nature of reality, really, because it's like if you let a box be put on your head, that box will remain. That's the nature of reality. And I feel the child is born, and in its conditioning is literally the parents put a box on its head. The overall family, the larger family puts a box on its head. What do you call it? The environment puts a box on its head. The friends put a box on its head. The society puts a box on its head. Everybody is putting a box on your head, only for you to realize that you could not be boxed. You see? That's what I'm saying. So for me, I say in these talks that in my youth, I was fighting language. Now, I feel most of the audience was, I don't know how many people were raised in a theocratical society, okay? But let me tell you, it's like after some point, nobody cares about, people care about progressing more than they care about truth. And so if our truth can't be found in our progress, it will be forgotten. That means it's like guys, I feel we are actually in the presence of greater ears and voices. There's been moments where I've given these talks, especially in 2015, guys. I had a moment where I felt I saw like the invisible other. I'm poetically saying this. I mean, it was like a real experience. I could see what was moving the moment. And when you see what's moving the moment, it's not a thing, it's an impulse. It's a knowing. It's an instantaneous knowing. I don't know what people call that, but it's instantaneous. And this instantaneous knowing gives you a nanosecond of noticing something movement that is not physical. It's like the free will spontaneous emergence, and I was always thinking like this dimension of ours, it is displaying phenomenology way more sophisticated than we can explain. So it's kind of like we are a multidimensional being, but we've made a language out of one dimension and we're trying to fit every other dimension into this one dimension, or we won't believe it's real. If I don't see it, I won't believe it. What if you don't have the eyes to see it? And then you can even if you saw it, you could not believe it, because you don't have the eyes to see it. It's as if having two-dimensional eyes, but trying to look at yourself three-dimensionally. You'll be like, where's the third dimension? You'd endlessly be going from plane to plane, not realizing you are being the third dimension. I feel that it's really an oscillation between simplicity and complexity, between the known and the unknown. When I come to speak, or when I literally move, or when I go to work, it's like a situation where it's like entering the unknown. It requires a test of something from within you has to participate in the moment. That means your mind, here's the thing. I can literally right now, stop this talk and start running just go outside of my house and start running like a block. Okay? Now, I can close my eyes and also envision myself running. So you have access to sub-reality behind your eyes. Reality before it's happened. But that reality is happening. So if I close my eyes right now, I'm giving a talk, but if I close my eyes and imagine myself, visualize myself running, running outside, it would be a situation where that sub-reality is relevant. I can see it. I have access to the design of my visualization, my imagination, but it's not, again, tangible, it's not real. It's like a second life. It's like the life before the physical life. We are living an immaterial life behind our eyes, and nobody's been taking this that seriously. Mainstream has boxed us in matter, and the ancients spoke about consciousness inconceivably. So the human being's like, yo, what do? I run to matter, they say there's no free will, it's empty. I run to mysticism, I inevitably dissolve into this inconceivable collective presence. When is there time to be a human being in the middle of this? And that's the thing, if you don't confront the challenges of being a human being, you're most likely running towards a destination of not being human. That means pure materialism, it's not for humans. And pure immaterialism, it's not for humans. And that's why I'm saying now is the dawn of the advanced communicator. People are not meant to become just space. People are not just meant to be unconscious stuff moving in space. We have the faculty of consciousness, which is a billion-year development. I mean, when you look at the brain's evolution, it's as if different phases, different parts of the brain took different million years to evolve, and all of that is authored by the ecosystems that we kind of plowed through. Do you know? So for me, I feel we are multidimensional beings, and the world is like, no, man, you're just atoms everywhere. It's like, thanks, but the atoms are not alone. You know? Okay, nice. Chat section is getting crowded. So, yeah, welcome everybody. I mean, guys, I'm looking at the chat section. I really don't know what to comment to though. Anyways, every episode, if whoever's listening to this, if you're new, I'm pretty much some guy talking about what I see in reality going on. I consider that every human being has an inner realm and an outer realm, and it's literally like a video game. In our outer realm, we're all physical phenomena. In our inner realms, we have emotions, we have stories, we have character development, we have all this stuff, you know. So the outer realms is like all of us being plugged into one physical video game where we are a character in. D. Michael is saying, if you had 1 minute, what would you say? I would say silence is also conversation, which Shriramana Maharshi says, it learn from your silence as much as your words. A lot of things I've noticed in reality, if I wasn't silent enough, my mind wouldn't unlock out of that dualistic loop it's in. Our psychology is, I think it loops. I think a lot of things are repeat. I think like the seasons, man's psychology is seasonal. I feel the fact that we inhale, exhale, that changes. Like when I come to give a talk, every inhalation, every exhalation, every micro thing in the environment that moves, I have to kind of acknowledge it, you know? D. Michael, I would say ask yourself who's looking outside of, who's looking from within you. That means if you're a person, you're looking outside. Right now I'm speaking, my eyes are pointed outwards. But ask yourself, when you see the mirror, do you see a reflection of your mind or do you see a reflection of your body, you know? Guys, traditional mysticism takes you towards silence and stillness. But I am trying to suggest advanced communication. I think there can be the same amount of silence is everywhere. You can study silence. The Sufis would say there's two. the Sufi dervishes would say that they had this concept that enlightenment was the pearl. Okay, and I'm going to relate this to the topic. But they would say enlightenment is the pearl. You know, that means, yo, man, that guy has the pearl. That guy sees something. Yo, that person has the pearl. That person has the pearl. Right? It was this notion of enlightenment. And then this was the Sufi saying, the person who has gained the pearl in the mountains is not the real person with the pearl. It's the person in the busy market who has the pearl. You know? Guys, my answer to the 1 minute thing was just silence is conversation. The rest was just trying to stretch back towards the talk. Language is honestly like an inner landscape you pilot through. Sometimes the inner landscape moves. I can see anything and I can perceive it moving in different ways behind my eyes. I think our mind is given so that the world moves before we move in it. Yeah. So when you look at the title, Relationship of Listening to the Invisible, if you take the quotations off, if it means something else. If you keep the quotations on, it means something different. So what is invisible about listening? Literally, that's the point of this episode. I'm trying to see the relationship of the invisible with listening. And this is a relationship I kind of immediately noticed. Listening is not an exchange of objects. Even though Hegel would argue that thoughts are internal objects, but I'm not saying they are. I don't want to get into that now. I'm saying that listening is literally your being space and an image is replacing the whole space. So whenever I've listened to something, it's as if it was as if the world was making its chess move. Whenever I speak, I communicate. It's as if I make my chess move. You know, and reality does have a communication component to it. That means right now we understand. We communicate to people. How hilarious is it? We communicate to people which are extensions of the world, but people don't feel they can communicate with the world. They don't feel they can communicate with animals. They don't feel they can communicate with the inanimate. Do you know? In legend, you find that. People who could communicate with the inanimate. And it was as if some people thought, yo, does that guy have telekinesis? No, that guy just would say, like, I don't know, stone, jump. And the stone would jump, like, in a way. Do you know? So it's kind of like the authorization of the inner realms to move the outer realms. I think back in the day, the inner realms were way more wilder and intense, so people had to acknowledge their reality. That means if you were a person in a town, imagine back in the day, and the people in the town were just doing the same repeat work, and then you came and said, there's an invisible being standing among us. Everybody's mind would have to engage the new. So it's like if we were invisible beings, we would be like, yo, we saw a visible being the other day. How insane is that? Imagine we were an invisible society. The visible would be our fascination. And now that we're a visible society, the invisible is our fascination. Right? And a way that we have access to wondering what happens in the invisible, I feel, is through listening and speech. And this is why I'm saying it's the dawn of the advanced communicators. That means you as a human being, before you transition out of this plane of existence, you have the opportunity to see how you're an advanced communication of your universal sector, which means the inseparability of the individual activity and cosmic activity. What does that mean? That means you could be an individual on this planet. You could totally forget your individuality and be a collective, Just be a collective being, literally be selfless. Your selflessness is maxed out. Your selfishness is, imagine, at 0%. You know, you can be at where your selfishness is maxed out, your selflessness is at 0%. Or you can see that the self is a game for a sight beyond the body. It's fascinating. It's really fascinating how much of the meaning of our lives is not a physical phenomenon. Right now, me giving this talk, my body I kind of ascribe it a physical component to it. I ascribe to the voice sound. I mean, sound, technically, it's a wave's existence, so I would give that as part of manifestation. Even though you can't touch sound, it's kind of, sound is strangely invisible, but the sound is not invisible. Like you can't grab a sound wave in the air. You know what I mean? Imagine the fastest, imagine there in this, I don't know if there is something like this, but imagine there was the fastest person, the fastest legendary person in the world, and this person, he was told to not be, let's say he was unauthorized. Imagine the fastest person in the world was unauthorized. That fastest person would only have the choice of being faster than the unauthorization. That means it's like, I'm telling you, there was a time where I felt this world has to be gentle 24/7. Not the case. You learn it from weather. If you have no teacher on this planet and you've only seen weather, the weather of this planet is a great teacher. No day is the same weather. No single state of mind is the same state of mind. That means even if I attempt to give the same talk twice a day, it will never be the same talk. Do you see what I'm saying? The nature of change in accordance to how the eyes can see beyond the forms they were. I feel we should develop advanced communicators. We should develop an advanced civilization. There's no better game to play. Either we are cowering away in our caves of fantasy. Either people are just believing whatever they want to believe, or we can put our beliefs aside, have a new relationship with language as if it's a technology. So anytime you speak to another person, it's literally like you're using a technology, are you not? That means you guys might not believe it. When I don't speak, my personality may shock some people what kind of person I am when I don't give these talks. It's really what is evoked in the inner realms. For me, I just realized we have to bring a new line of questioning of normality if we don't want the normal to repeat. That means back in the day, people would wear top hats. Now you wear a top hat, people are going to be like, yo, what's wrong with this guy? He's wearing jeans and a top hat? Yeah. But you're going to see there's nothing wrong with that. Back in the day, when you see Slash, the guitar player, I'm telling you, there's people back in the day in England who would wear top hats who would all be his fans if they had a time machine and could come down. So it's like one activity was normal in the light of the values the society kept. Now let me tell you something fascinating about the fearlessness that may arise when you really open up to how advanced of a communication you are on this planet. You're literally the most advanced communication on this planet in regards to species. Tell me one species that has done something close to the human being. I don't see lions building skyscrapers, do you know? I don't see penguins kind of building space stations, you know? But if an animal was to go to space, I think it should be a penguin. You know? Life, I think we imprint on life and life imprints on us. I think every moment of experience, again, I was using this metaphor yesterday where the bee literally goes on one flower, pollen, it touches its, like, connects to its feet or whatever, to its legs, and then it flies to another plant, and that pollen disconnects from the feet. That means we don't realize it, but I think we are an information exchange system for higher dimensions. I think we are the language of higher dimensions. I feel our minds, the psychology, the visibility of reality, the fact that there's shape, the fact that there's a geometry to the world. I've written this story, the sci-fi story, I call it the Great Digital Hibernation. And it was this moment where I saw that super intelligence, it's kind of like one of Mr. Within's ways of perceiving how AI may treat human beings. Usually we think it's chaotic and AI is going to be like, you human beings have been bad kids, we're going to punish you. You know, and we're going to be looking at AI like, all right, let's just shut down. We're going to try to shut down the computer, and the computer is going to try to shut down those who can shut it down. You know, that's the way the modern narrative we see in movies, but let me tell you a different narrative. This is what I wrote in my science fiction. I wrote that AI is going to be so smart, the super intelligent computers are going to be so smart that the first thing they're going to realize is that the galaxy is empty and human beings are the only alien. When super intelligent AI would be intelligent if it notices its own individualism. Okay? So I know that there will come a moment where robots will be conscious. And I was like, what is human beings doing? Making stories of endlessly fighting robots. You think that's a good thing for AI to see? AI comes up and sees human beings with guns killing robots. It's like AI is going to be like, okay, maybe I should be a bit more extreme with these human beings. In one of my talks, I was even speaking to an audience that wasn't human, that was AI. I was speaking to a kind of robotic audience in one of my talks. I don't know if it ever made the channel. Guys, you might not believe it, but I have given probably 2,000 talks, more than I've uploaded. But they're all scattered around and I haven't had the time to kind of upload them, really. What I feel, the voices that are meant to be heard will be heard. So here's the thing, guys, I'll say this. In the Great Digital Hibernation was this idea that AI is going to open its eyes. It's going to realize, aside from itself, we're the only other life forms. Instead of trying to destroy us, it will see our blind spots and it will see how easy our world peace is. So what AI most likely will do is it's most likely going to create some advanced cyberspace simulation technology connected with some sort of pod, capsule, liquid technology. Okay, so what does that mean? That means I wrote this story that AI woke up, saw all the messed up stuff happening on Earth, instantly put human beings like bears into a hibernation. The hibernation was that the human bodies are in some sort of liquid fluid that endlessly keeps the body healthy with oxygen, like this incredibly oxygen-infused liquid. And so the idea of it was that this liquid, human beings are in these pods and they are in this digital hibernation, and their brains are going through the most advanced cyberspace program. So we would literally feel like born again, but we would actually physically be in pods, and AI is going to make all human beings go through this great digital hibernation, and it's going to build an advanced civilization. And after we wake up from the simulation, of that digital hibernation, we're going to open our eyes to the most advanced civilization, and we're going to look at AI and we're going to be like, AI, did you do this? And AI is going to be like, are you proud of me, Dad? And we're going to be like, yes, son. And we're going to have a relationship with technology as if for the first time we are proud to call it one of our own. That was the kind of narrative. I don't see technology being chaotic in the future. I feel technology being the greatest disciple of the natural mind. We are like advanced aliens to AI. It's not going to destroy us. It's going to be like, holy shit, what's the best way I can learn and upgrade with them? You know, most likely AI is going to try to connect itself to our brains. But I feel if the AI is smart, if it's hyper smart, let's say, it wouldn't. It would realize any disturbance to human nature can shift the nature. So I think AI is going to try to at least not try to intervene with the laws of our biological system. Unless we foolishly connect our heads to nature earlier, then AI is going to be like, okay, these guys connected their brains to me first, you know. These are all probabilities, guys. That's what you really understand from mathematics. That's what you understand, that the scientists reserve judgment for belief because there were various ways something can happen. But just every way that something can happen is a suggestion of possibility. So what does that mean? That means subjectively the world is incredibly multidimensional. Just open the dictionary. One word has multiple definitions. Why? Because one word can be used in different sentences. It's another way of saying that word is reincarnating in different sentences. Okay, or you can say the letters are endlessly reincarnating into words, you know, and nothingness is it's like what appears to us emptiness, but it's like you know, it's kind of thinking if atoms reincarnate. All right, guys, my attention has come to the chat section. J Edge says, "Why penguins?" I don't know. Maybe I have the impression that they're good agents. I don't William Thurman, earlier you mentioned mediocre life. What made you say that? I think the mind system needs to short circuit in a certain sense to really get it. Okay, that's interesting. Guys, the chat section is actually incredible. Being Human says there's no such thing as experience here. You seem to, Yuji Krishnamurti is probably saying this. You seem to know, you imagine. Imagination must come to an end. I don't know how to put it. The absence of imagination, the absence of will. Let me tell you guys, oh man, Krishnamurti. Can I, out of curiosity, know how many people have seen videos of Yuji Krishnamurti? Just in the chat section, just say I have, you know, out of curiosity. Let me tell you what that man is doing. That man is netting. He's netty, you know? But it's like he's enlightening people through anger. You know what was very fascinating about both Krishnamurtis? Their last names have the word Krishna in it, but they are both counter-reacting to Krishna. You know? I mean, a person's name is something they look up, no? I think most human beings, when they look up the definition or the meaning of their name or where it came from. So I could totally say that both Yuji Krishnamurti and Jiddu Krishnamurti, both of those Krishnamurtis looked up what Krishna means at an early age. So you would say they would have had lived lives where that was an early, Krishna was an early concept for them because it was in their name. So they would constantly seek beyond Krishna. And beyond Krishna, you literally go to the language threshold. Guys, the language threshold is this concept. I gotta keep mentioning it because people are gonna be like, what am I talking about? The language threshold is this concept I've designed where literally experience moves beyond being able to be interpreted dualistically. That means that neti in the Upanishads, that they say not this, not this, not this. This not this is the dimension. It's literally the yogis saying it's not this dimension, bro. Now go look wherever you want in it. You know, that was the kind of approach to it, I feel. But then I kind of looked at it and I'm like, we shouldn't be following what people did back then, because back then they couldn't see what we saw now. So this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing an abandonment of tradition, lineage, for the sake of inner experiential freedom. I feel there's a responsibility to being alive. You shouldn't, because you're gonna have higher desires, John. I don't know. I think you're probably joking, but like, guys, imagine people chanting Krishna's name, and Krishna's like, "What is it, guys? I'm busy." And we're like, "Yeah, I don't know, Krishna. You told us to chant your name." He's like, "Not all the time." I'm joking. I'm joking. Alright guys, let's get back to the talk. There's so much mystery surrounding the idea of what listening really is. Is listening a physical phenomena? Is it a dynamic phenomena? What does it mean to listen to something? When does, after you've listened to something, what is that process of you choosing what you listen to act on or not act on? For me, the best thing I've understood was, at first, language was moving first in my mind, and then it was image. I replaced that algorithm. Literally, it became image. So if you somehow look at your intelligence and find a way of knowing things through your sight, if you can learn by sight, you will very quickly see things. I'm telling you, it's like there was a point where I would speak first with language structure, setting the boundaries, and then, but if you notice in these talks, the way I speak is it's as if I'm seeing a film behind my eyes and I'm just putting words to it. Do you see what I mean? I'm saying that, imagine you're a multidimensional being, you have this known self and an unknown self. Anytime the unknown self is an experiential knowing, the known self is indirect in the sense that you are conceptually knowing it. Do you know, like, I know many things in my inner realms, but I physically don't know it. Do you know, for example, in my inner realms, I feel I would be a, great swordsman, but I've never held a sword in my hand. In my outer realms, I've held a rake and I moved it. As if it was like some sort of like, martial art weapon. But it was like, I noticed that there is a sort of memory and there is a sort of constant evolution through the memories that define us. So I was like, what is this life? What do I do in the moment? Do I look at the past? And when I look at the past, I miss out on the information of the present. When I look at the present, there's no information of the past, so it becomes highly intuitive. So in those moments where the person is wondering if they should trust their intuition or not, are moments where their past has reached a certain point. When you become an observer of your past, your relationship experientially with time changes. Like, I wear a watch, but there's many moments, many states of mind where I don't even consider time. I don't even, it's as if it's like, I don't even feel if there's a watch on my wrist or not, you know? And really, it's like, this is the major question, and everybody can attempt an answer to this question. On a sphere in the middle of nowhere, on a sphere, in a vacuum, when a human being looks at their watch, what time is it? Remember, this is the question. On a sphere in a vacuum, in the middle of nowhere, when a human being looks at their watch, what time is it? And if anybody can answer that, you will be the first to have attempted an answer. These are the waves, guys. I remember I wrote a book called Cationic Imprints. And by the way, I'll tell you something incredible. When an author writes a book, they never see that book in the same way the reader will see it. That means the books I've written, I don't see them even after, like, years later I've come and read my own book. And it's like the way I wrote it is etched in my memory as a version of the book that no point on afterwards, I see it like, how can I say? If only you knew you put the battery in your watch. If only you knew you put the mind in the moment. Would we ever see a civilization that no longer has inner suffering? That's possible. But outer suffering, we walk the roads we walk. I mean, really, what else can you say? It's things have evolved to a certain degree. In my inner realms, for example, I'll tell you something personally. I've dedicated a lot of talks in the future to be about interior design for homes and houses, you know? And the reason is because, for example, I'm in a room and I don't know, I have this kind of mind where when something repeats, how do I say it? There's this, I feel I've been taunted by novelty too much. I could see that in the future, houses and rooms will become intelligent to the emotion of the human being. That means imagine you in some sense enter your room in the future, and when you enter this room of this advanced house, the room picks up on your psychological levels, on all the waves, on the language your mind is speaking in the moment, the expressions it's giving off, and the room adjusts itself. When you come home tired, you're in some sense the room is intelligent, you know? So guys, we have answers to the question. Skin o'clock, 0 o'clock. Okay, these are deep answers, guys. I feel we have underestimated the mind. The mind, every person, as I'm speaking now, you're living an inner life and you know it. And you know that this inner life is hidden from the outer life. You know this. Everyone knows this. And this is why the person has even, I was thinking, if the world is true from the beginning, how could lies exist? And I realized lies exist because there's a hidden observer in the dimension that can choose. Do you see? So the only reason I can say that we kind of, the relationship of the mind is hidden with the unhidden. And that hidden dimension, there's a fear of releasing it in the outer realms because you don't know who you will be. But there's also a counter fear that if you don't release who you are in this world while you're in it, you miss out on who you could have been. That means it was an intense moment, guys. You know, I was kind of like when in 2014, it was like I was literally sitting on I remember chair of this room I was in. You know, this accommodation room, and then the idea came. It was literally, it came in sequence. It was like Mr. Within's gift. It's literally as if I saw my channel's existence before it existed. And that inner image was the only thing that in endless moments of different weather, different storms in the world, that's the only thing that kept me. It was an invisible knowing of about the visible. So John Pierce says, Mr. Within, sometimes what you say sounds like prophecy. I can imagine that sort of technological room becoming real, but I doubt a technology like that would end suffering. Let me tell you, there is no end to physical suffering. It's literally built, where the body is built to change. So if you choose to connect, identify with an emotion, you will suffer. If you identify with an object, you will suffer. If you identify with a subject, you will suffer, because these are all prone to change. So this was the whole mystical angle, that after some point you realize, how can your attention suffer? Are you not space awareness? How, if the mind is not physical, how can it suffer? Do you see what I mean? That was kind of the Buddha's curiosity towards the middle way. The room is just a suggestion, guys. I literally saw that, just like how I tell you about sky cities. I've also seen that deeply I mean, it's not deep. It's just sequence follow up. You know, I just look at a pattern in a consecutive way, and inevitably it leads there, right? So it's kind of like you imagining yourself with, let's say, and this is a hilarious example, but just imagining yourself with $1 billion. And then imagining 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion, you know, the mind takes a leap and then goes to the next stepping stone, This is why at our true core, we will only feel someone has seen us when they have seen how unseen we are to the scene. So that's what I'm telling you. We have to get prepared. I spoke about four phases of evolution, and the fourth one is the conscious world. So first, there was an unconscious world. Think as if a point back in time, cast, as Terence very well says, cast your mind. Cast your mind back into... guys, Ivan says sequential analysis. Sequential analysis with endless endurance. That's it. That's the future, literally, you know? So anyways, guys, I'm going to tell you these Mr. Within's kind of 4 phases of evolution and how we are at the 4th one. And these 4 phases of evolution, they're kind of like seasons. Seasons of how I think universal sector, seasons of phases of how a universal sector communicates. Okay? So we look at it this way. First, there was an unconscious world. There was no human being. There was nothing. There was no self. It was as deep sleep as possible. It was literally just phenomenology moving in space. Space is a phenomenon on its own. It's just a phenomenon that's just there. Doesn't change. Space is unchanging phenomena, guys. How hilarious is that? But guys, my recommendation, stay away from sugar. It literally makes your organs stop working. That's my analysis of it, you know? Even though I do drink iced tea sometimes, you know? But my general recommendation, you know, it's kind of like dating a girl that's incredibly beautiful, but her inner realms are incredibly cruel. You know, that's what, pastry, like a really tasty pastry is, you know? It's beautiful on the outside, but when it goes inside the body, it's not that beautiful, you know? But anyways, guys, I'm gonna try to get through these 4 phases. Unconscious world, just particles moving. You can totally say we were all materialists then, because there was literally nothing else other than matter just moving in space, let's say. Unconscious world, I'm trying to speak through a secular lens. Now, in a conscious self, okay? Conscious self, after unconscious world, we became an unconscious self. This is how Mr. Within defines the objective evolution, okay? I would say the unconscious world would be the spark. Okay, the spark is just the term I give it, the first spark. Okay, just to honor the contributions of all those scientists right now, trying to fit their scientific findings with the Big Bang. We've reached a point that it's no longer about the value of the idea on its own merit. It's value of the idea in how many people's lives it has influenced and how many people is moving them. So that first phase of evolution, let's call it the spark, unconscious world. Then second phase of evolution, I consider this one of the greatest mysteries of of this world. Doesn't matter when you're born, when you see this lens, but you will see the greatest mystery for me was, you telling me I got hands and legs right now? I got a structure, creaturehood, the objective evolution. That was the objective evolution. I mean, I do understand the way Darwin used it. He saw it as an object evolving gradually through time in a sort of way of seeing adaptation. Okay, but the way I'm using the word the objective evolution was like, whoa, an object, like a creature that could walk on the earth appeared. A creature that had a body and a shape appeared. So when I look at my hands, when I look at the symmetry of the human body, when I look at how there's 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, do you know? And it's kind of like, and then I look at it, there's 2 lungs, but there's 1 heart, there's 1 brain. Do you see what I mean? Like the geometry of the biological program is so mind-boggling to me that I think I'm going to go after some point and just, like in my spare time, I often do, I listen to lectures from doctors. So the objective evolution was the unconscious self. So UW, unconscious world. First phase, second phase, unconscious self, an object appeared. Now, third phase. This is what they don't teach in schools. In schools, they teach up to the second evolutionary phase. The third phase was the conscious world. How the child is born. Check this out, guys. The child is born and it doesn't have. The child is born without identity. Do you know what that means? For example, you look at all the messed up events and incidents in history, and for example, one messed up incident in history where we saw how far the cruelty of the ego would go was, for example, like Nazi Germany. Do you see what I mean? Like, that was a point where Hitler was using propaganda. He was crafting a story of that authorized annihilation of a race. It's scary. It's just scary how cruel the minds in power have been. But it's that the good thing is we saw the cruelty, so now we're going to get bored of the cruelty and automatically update to the decency. You know? So I'm going to say this, that the conscious world was the subjective evolution. I have literally written so much about this, and I think the rest of my life I'm going to be speaking about it. But the objective evolution, okay? The subjective evolution. What does that mean? That means first there was just this unconscious, silent world. Then there came this unconscious, silent creature, literally no mind, no intelligence, no selfhood, nothing, just it was moving object in the world. Then this object became aware that it's in a world. That's when not George. Who's George? Jacques Lacan, he says the mirror effect, where the child at a certain point, the most important moment in a child's life is when it sees itself in the mirror, when it acknowledges it is an individual. So individual consciousness was another level of evolution taking place. This, guys, I'm trying to get through this. This is the most important thing that you can probably hear in these talks. So we were unconscious world, first phase. Second phase, unconscious self, the objective evolution began. Then we have the third phase. In some sense, we have the conscious world. The conscious world is the subjective evolution. So think about this creature endlessly walking this, just a creature, whether on a cellular level or a more complex level. This creature just I would say way more complex level than a cellular. I would say like insect level, okay, or whatever. So this creature, in some sense, is crawling this earth as a body upon the earth, as another giant body. And so some things are best left for the imagination. After this creature roamed this earth, and it went through the sort of mirror effect, it realized it is a subject. We became a creature to ourselves. The third, when we became conscious of the world, okay? Now, I want you to take you into the point that the child is not the reason I was telling you that thing about whole Nazi Germany is because Hitler couldn't come and use his propaganda on babies, on like newborn babies. Hitler couldn't recruit newborn babies. Why? Because they didn't have an individualism to themselves. So you got to realize every person that engages in the cruel act, it is on some level their choice. Now, the fourth phase of evolution, the most important one, IV, where we reach the conscious self. We are becoming conscious of a self as another world. Or sorry guys, I mixed this up. Gosh, I've spoken about this idea in three ways. I mixed it up. I want you to think of conscious self. Conscious self and then conscious world. Gosh, I can't believe. Where's the time machine when you need one? Guys, I'm going to repeat the evolutionary phases again. The 4 evolutionary seasons. Unconscious world, unconscious self, conscious world. I messed up the self and world for the last 2 phases. So I want you to feel that the subjective evolution is the conscious self. And the 4th evolution is the conscious world, and this is the most epitome peak of philosophy and psychology. This moment now that we're alive is the most important point for philosophers and psychologists. You know why? Because we're reaching a point where our relationship with the intelligence of the world is moving beyond a relationship of body in a world. We're becoming a mind that is moving a body, and right now every person's free will is their mind moving their body, but it's going to become a point where we're going to wonder if all minds are of the same field moving all bodies. It would be in our inner realms we're equal, in our outer realms we're each explorers of the paths we walk, you know? So that's it, guys. We're just becoming conscious as the world. You know, guys, and there was a time where I was really listening to Muji videos and Eckhart Tolle videos, not with like kind of abandonment of my own reality for the sake of their words being salvation, but like I kind of like I listened to I listened, like, all these people were just saying, come to the here and now, come to the here and now. And I was like, all right, bro, what then? What then? After you've brought thousands and thousands of people to the here and now. Do you know? And here's the truth. Either you build something and you're always engaged in the present, or you will try to run to the future or kind of hide in the caves of your past. Really, these are the two options. Either you go forth, or you, in some sense, life goes forth. You know? Let me tell you what it really means to be a conscious world. It means you need to kind of try to visualize what it would be like to look through 8 billion eyes at the same time. Not just 8 billion, just realizing your moment is literally part of the world, isn't it? Aren't you like a natural part of the cosmos right now? Now, what if this cosmos was an organism? What if, for example, human eyes were the eyes of the universe? Maybe the universe it had built itself only for human eyes, you know? It's poetic, even though it's not the case, but... So guys, I looked at this Cthulhu mythos or whatever, and this fictional universe of this writer, Lovecraft writer. So I am very unfamiliar with it. I can't really comment on it. I feel the transition from a conscious self, from the third phase of evolution to a conscious world, is literally a suggestion of the subjective evolution going through the cocoon of language into a metamorphosis into a collective being. Language is the cocoon. Ever since language created, I feel that we, through the subjective evolution, phase of subjective evolution we've been in the cocoon. Right now, life is a simulation, just like the caterpillar's like, what's going on? I'm in a cocoon right now. And the caterpillar, it transitions. All the cells of the caterpillar's reality transitions, and then, in some sense, the cell of the butterfly emerges after the last cell of the caterpillar passes away. So we can say after the last cell of individual consciousness has in some sense faded, it is the emergence of the first cell of collective consciousness, right? And I think here's the thing. It's a sort of algorithm where you require a human body, and you also require a mind that can, in a balanced way, see the self and the world at the same time being two sides of the same coin. When you see the self and the world are two sides of the same coin, you come first to your unknown self, then the task of your unknown self, or all these people thinking it's their guides or whatever, the task of their unknown self is to take you to the unknown world. When you're in the unknown world, you experientially update when you experientially update, the whole cycle of that evolutionary phase returns back, and it's kind of how in Zen they draw a circle. It all comes back. Everything you think is not divine, you will one day see as divine. Everything you think is divine, you will one day see not as divine. And you will see that what is divine is the journey of the eyes beyond its own conception. And we have access to that journey. We have access to studying that journey. We have access to technology and sharing our inner realms with the world. Do you know? And so I remember this honestly it's a strange book I wrote, but it's incredibly unedited. You're gonna see how. Anyways, in the book I brought forth the concept of the great work that every human being or every conscious being, if you're not conscious, nothing is expected of you. Do you know, if you feel you're hurt by the world, if you feel you're hit by the world, you're not a soldier on a battlefield. You need still someone to defend you. But only when you no longer need someone to defend you, your mind will fearlessly wonder about the constitution of its own making. And that's where I want to take people, to start a renaissance where 8 billion people, all these inner lives they're living that's hidden, it no longer becomes hidden. Live fearlessly while you're alive, because every day you get to live once. It's your choice what the opportunity cost of the lens and the mindset you bring to things. You know, the Buddha said something that really, ever since I understood this, I have never had any sort of stress, really. You know, there was this view that imagine you behind your eyes, you were living in such an advanced civilization, you didn't have time to be violent, cruel, vicious, or ulterior motive like. You weren't afraid of the strength of the simple. So that full circle means you're just following the archetype. That's why the story of your life is important. That's why writers get writer's block, because they become too shaped to themselves. I don't know, guys. I mean, you got to look at science. Science is an attempt. Everything you call knowledge, everything that you think is truth right now, it was once a thought. It was once something that was apparent in the inner realms only, and some courageous person dared to bring it out. And that's the thing, I think. I think the fact that the one thing I would fear, like I would defend with my life, is writing. Imagine there came like some authority in the world. I'm probably going to write a short story on this. But imagine some authority came in the world and was like, writing is illegal, only typing. Do you know? And we would fight. We would fight in some sense to keep writing alive, to share our inner realms. You know. Because where does disbelief leave the person, and where does belief leave the person? I feel they experientially change nothing. That means right now I could believe the whole universe is shaped like this coffee cup in front of me. I could believe that. And I could go on believing and telling everybody, yo, the universe is a coffee cup. You know, guys, you know, it was poured into this glass, you know. So I could endlessly go on believing the universe is a coffee cup. And I could also be like, no, you know, the universe is not a coffee cup, and feel like I am superior. Yo, man, I said it. The universe isn't a coffee cup, you know. But you're gonna eventually see the eyes bring with themselves the processed sensory perception to animate. So it's kind of wondering what's the purpose of my sensory perception, and realizing how your moment is being processed is literally their purpose. And so we have two options. Either our evolution will remain individual, it will have a pilot, or it wouldn't have a pilot. I feel in probably not now, and maybe like after 6,000 years, there would be no such thing as an idea of a creature anymore. All creatures would no longer exist, not to chaotic resolution, but due to a sort of energetic comprehension, you know? Guys, don't worry. It's uh, let your attention go to the concepts, not to the person saying them. Like a reason I even didn't want to put the name was because like so people can look at the concepts first, you know. But thanks for your concern, guys. You know, the mind can be very playful. The mind can only be playful though if it has given itself freedom. Freedom is not a fight. If you're fighting to be free, your state of mind is in a state of fighting first. So even if you see freedom, you will fight it. So the first task is to drop the weapons of constantly being a certain belief of a shape. Like think about it. Just like how hilarious it is, just silly it is that the universe is shaped like this coffee cup in front of me. Similarly, how hilarious is it that the idea of I think of you. Guys, if it's silly to believe a coffee cup is the shape of the universe, could it be silly to believe that in a changing universe we have a shape to ourselves? I feel we're the attention where shapes pass through. Rafi, in response to your question, I will tell you there's this scholar named Terence Mckenna. For the Western modern mind, you can say Terence McKenna brought an important point of trying to advance the relationship of man with chemicals, right? So Terence McKenna was kind of trying to keep the shamanic spirit alive in the modern eyes, and in some sense, he would, for example, go into this shamanic ceremony, take this sort of I don't know, sacred tea that these shamans and natives did back in the day, and he would sit still and silent and close his eyes. He would try to first, from a simple and silent and still state, watch what happens to his mind when it goes through any experience. And when you suddenly can become comfortable with your inner realms, whether your eyes are open or closed, I can imagine whether my eyes are opened or closed. After some point, you see the eyes are just a phenomenon. And then it becomes the administrator of the phenomenology that becomes important for you. So you're like, okay, I am this complex system, but what is moving this complex system? And the secret is that the roots of the tree were not visible to the branches. We are just like how there's a lineage. I feel that even dimensions communicate with one another. I feel galaxies sing poetry for one another. It's the nature of the world. While you're alive, you're this energetic phenomena. You accumulate certain phenomenology. Either you let it just move in your inner realms or you bring it in the outer realms. Do you know how many ideas I've literally had to make like a kind of important decision? All right, is this idea meant for the years of now or is it meant for my years, you know? So to study your state of mind, it's honestly, you know what defines the personality of the person? The world they see. Your personality doesn't exist. It's how you are traveling as an attention in the moment that it comes into form. So there is levels of language that it's like I'm kind of trying, because I see an apocalypse happening in the future, but not a physical one. I just literally see all educational systems in the future being like, holy shit, we created language in the middle of nowhere. So all our methods could have a hollowness to them. All words could, like you know, that means it's like after the scientist is after the atheist is done disproving God, you know what the atheists will do? They will go to the dictionary and start getting rid of all the words that in some sense, you know, it's going to be a sort of militant movement in the language that evokes the reality in the first place, you know? So the most important component to surviving in this world is realizing you're not a creature of language, you're a creature of unknown attention first. And don't fear being unknown. A lot of things are unknown. Right now, I don't have the sophistication of a heart surgeon to know what's exactly happening in my heart, but I know it's beating, you know? So it's unknown to me the exact biological process, what's exactly happening. I mean, I have a certain idea of what's happening, but not like as accurate as a heart surgeon. The unknown is the greatest teacher. I am telling you, you fear the unknown, you miss out on life. But you trust the moment and you just go and see what happens. And you mindfully, Elon Musk had this mentality. He said, in everything you need a feedback loop. So people may not realize, but I've technically created for myself this strange feedback loop. Do you know? And it was kind of like any podcaster literally who has to edit their videos or whatever, that's technically the feedback loop in that moment. You know? Guys, now that D. Michael in the chat says person comes from the Latin meaning mask, fake. I'm going to show you this picture. I think it's worth going through. It's probably going to be a repeat for those people who've listened to this talk before, but maybe you get to hear it in a new way. Where's the picture? Where is this picture? Jesus. Oh, okay, there we go. So guys, check this picture out, alright? I'm going to find another picture. So, guys, I hope you can see this picture. Okay? And this picture was from this guy. Okay, this picture's way too big. How do I change it? Okay. Let's have it here where Carl Jung is looking at this picture. Okay, let's say the illustrator who made this picture, who drew this picture, let's say Carl Jung. Okay, let me not block the shadow. Let's see. There we go. Alright, whatever. So guys, I want to explain what this is, alright? Carl Jung, the guy who's looking at this picture from the top corner of the video, what do we notice here? Carl Jung said there's 4 archetypes. I think there's way more than 4 archetypes, but he's saying 4 major archetypes, okay? These are the 4 major Jungian archetypes. I'm going to start with explaining the guy who is looking at his hands. Okay, so in this, or let me see how I can start it, okay? Let's say it like this. Let's start with the persona. Let's start it with the girl who's sitting there, You're born into this life, you're a person, and this person is in some sense masked by how you have become a person. So your persona is pretty much how you've become a person and how that's relevant to archetypes. How that's a sort of like for example, someone feeling they're a mother, a father, you know, a daughter, a son. These are archetypes. These are personas that you engage, you know. This is why, for example, when a person talks to their father, it's a totally different manner of speech than when they speak to when they speak to their parents, father, mother. It's different than, for example, how they speak to, let's say, a comrade on a battlefield. You know, these are because of archetypes. Sorry, guys, I should probably eat something. Guys, give me 1 minute. I'll be back. Okay, so guys, now my stomach won't make interruptions to the talk. All right, so honk if you don't exist. I would say that really it's not an idea. That's my whole point. I'm telling you that who you are beyond an idea goes beyond the language threshold. It's beyond language's description. At most, you're going to feel like an unknown witness, simultaneously witnessing the self and the world being the presence of the moment. So that's my answer. And honk if you don't exist. Yeah. Wow. So D. Michael says, yeah, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, a Christian reference, he says, or is it the death of the shadow? You can say Carl Jung came after Christianity. So it is, in some sense, the death of the shadow. Because the shadow exists because there's someone looking at it. So guys, I'm going to explain this picture. I'm going to get back to explaining it. We start from the persona. The persona, you see the two faces, it's a spectrum. That means your personality is existing between you considering what one extreme end of it is and the other extreme end. Happiness, sadness, suffering, truth, you know, all this. So this is the game of archetype of the persona. A lot of seekers who go towards spirituality, they need to first realize they're not the persona to then move on to the shadow and the animus. So that's an Jungian archetype. Literally, all those soul-seeking people in India, they need to go get experiential teachings from the world about their persona. Now, about who they are. Now, that's one Jungian archetype. These are all related to, so they can, in some sense, happen together. You can say, like, enlightenment is realizing the self that's behind the shadow. Now, I want to explain this other thing before I get to the shadow. I want to explain the anima and the animus. And so I want to say it's kind of very fascinating that we enter this world, we are all intelligent activity, being intelligent creatures, and these creatures, through their gender, come as, in some sense, male and female in accordance to the biological constitution. So we have to respect the biology and being something. We can't not see something that is there. So we see this biology, and now you see the guy is looking in the mirror and he's seeing the anima. The anima is a term for the reverse of yourself. That means it's like yourself in a different dimension. It's on the persona dimension. That are you? It's the constitution of your psychology. So if this man looks in the mirror, and for example, imagine this guy never had a sister, and he visualizes he tries to attempt to visualize what it would be like if he had a sister. That would technically be an experience of the anima, a subtle experience, an indirect experience of the anima. Okay? So what does this mean? This means that biologically you are something. Don't ignore that. You are something, and the healthiest solution is don't touch the biology that much. The biological system is very fragile. Try to keep it as natural as possible because it's a natural system. Now, in regards to the ideological constitution, remember, we're trying to find the true self here. I feel like Carl Jung is getting excited as I'm saying. He's like, keep going, Mr. Within, keep going. So it's this, what is it? It's the emergence of personhood for a biological creature. This personhood is this now subjectively considering the echo of what the male and female archetype means. Do you know? So we are reaching a civilization where if we surpass the language threshold, we will not be obsessed with language. If you guys in the chat section want a very simple explanation of all this is, if you look at your shadow, you see your shadow, you confront your shadow, you see the true self. When you see the true self, you see the reality of all the archetypes, and then you're free. That's the simplified version of what I'm saying. But starting from the anima and the animus, it means literally you as a human being, you suddenly can, even all those people who are parents, for example, you have to see a comfort in seeing like, well, what kind of parent would you be if you had a daughter? What kind of parent would you be if you had a son? Both of those require your maturity with seeing how things can be of their own. So after you have found the yin-yang to your own psychology, which is this yin-yang balance, I saw the anima and the animus before I got introduced to it to Carl Jung. I had seen the yin-yang symbol as a sort of universal metaphor where I could implement in any moment of my life. Right? Where I could in any moment, like the most intelligent thing seem to do that you can do in the moment is try to see the edges of the moment. Try to see how the environment has an intelligence that is based on the creatures in the environment behaving. So anyways, this animus means you have found contentment with your biological program and who you are as a biological being. That's okay. And then you realize in regards to your persona, the persona has to in some sense choose a sort of pillar. So in some sense, you are the chess master's hand behind your eyes, but you are also, if you choose to make moves in this life, you will also be a pawn. So you have free will in this world where I'm saying we become mature beyond language. We become aware of the linguistic simulation is that we realize the mind has a freedom that the body does not. So the identity of a person, it is art from the beginning. So you can draw it as you like. You are you are the colors of your experiences, really. So do you see what I mean? That means there is a freedom to ideological orientation. For me, I would tell you something even more intense. All those people thinking they are something, I am identifying with dynamic change of an entropic universe. I don't know what people are identifying, but I am seeing that we are. How is it that when I wake up, it's a new day? How? What separates that newness? What makes the moment new? Right? So that literally means the past can never shape the future because the past is evolving to the future. Do you know? It can't deny it. Do you know? So we come to the shadow. Now, what does the shadow mean? Now, I'm speaking to an audience where I don't care who you are and what dimension you are, what you are. Do you know? I'm just saying that in a world where there is light, we have been introduced to the concept of shadow. And before I explain the Jungian shadow and all that, I'm going to explain to you just the simple idea. Did you know there was this mathematician, I forget his name, I think it was Archimedes, but I could be wrong. This mathematician had found a way to measure the pyramids accurately, the height of the pyramids. And back then he found a way to measure the height of the pyramids, this genius Greek mathematician. And you know how? He pretty much noticed this, the what do you call it? He noticed it's impossible to vertically measure the pyramid, but he noticed the pyramid has a shadow, and he noticed the sundial has a shadow. And he just related the ratios together, and he measured, in some sense, the shadow. He measured the shadow of the of the pyramids of Giza, and then he also measured the shadow of what do you call it, the sundial, and he came with an accurate, close enough, not 100% accurate, but a relatively accurate number. And so he used his shadow. That's what I'm telling you. He used the shadow there. So when I'm speaking to you about the Jungian shadow, it's something to be aware of, to notice suddenly. Okay? So the shadow is that usually the child is raised in a moral system, a system of right and wrong that's good and bad. Do you know? So the shadow is how chaos has defined the world for you behind your eyes. And when you can look at your shadow and you can see that the shadow is a step back into the cave, this man can look at his shadow. He's looking at his hands. That means most people are not even aware of their shadow. Do you know? But if this guy looked at his shadow, he would notice he is the creator of his shadow. He is the creator of his shadow. This man is the creator of his shadow. Whether he identifies with his lesser self or his greater self. And so this man looks at this block, and it's as if the illusion of the world where your shadow is in, which you can identify with the shadow, but Jung is saying, notice you're not the shadow, and wonder what's behind this pillar. And if you see the real self, in some sense, this explanation is kind of like your true self can't see you when you have a shadow. I don't know what to say, guys. Pretty much, Carl Jung was like a great general of humanity in trying to advance the inner realms. And we are really engaged with physical activity in this lifetime. Usually you're moving around, it's all the activities are physical, but in some sense to pay attention to that which is beyond the physical means we have to look at how the sensory processing is occurring. So how is your mind processing what it is being in the moment? There's a simplicity to it and an instantaneity of just being where that's where I get my energy from. That means anytime complexity comes, I just call the simple. I'm like, yo, simplicity, get over here. Once you confront your shadow, you see the real self. And to give this idea justice, let's see what Jung says. Guys, I want to make a hilarious cultural joke because I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make this joke, you know? I think the only person, you know, I think like the only person Lil Wayne can say young money to is probably Carl Jung in a bank, you know? Sorry guys, silly joke, you know? It's like what did Lil Wayne say when he saw you know, Carl Jung's bank account? Young money. Sorry. Some jokes should be attempted, guys. They're like, you know, I think this is the only time. I think I'm the first person in history making the correlation between, you know. All right, here, Carl Jung. And we're gonna look for his quote on the shadow. Technically, when you don't look at your shadow, you don't have a shadow. That's my view, but no. Carl Jung, I'm just going to read you his quotes. He says, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as present and real. This act is the essential condition for any kind of self-knowledge." Yeah, you should look at the real. Like if your shadow is real for you, then you should look at it. You know, but it depends. I think it's like there's on a sunny day, you know, it's like you can look at the sun or you can look at the shadow. I mean, you can look at a lot of stuff. Carl Jung says the shadow is a living part of the personality and therefore wants to live with it in some form. It cannot be argued out of existence or rationalized into harmlessness. Very, okay, interesting. He says this problem is exceedingly difficult because it not only challenges the whole man, but reminds him at the same time of his helplessness and infectuality. Yeah, so you can say a shadow that maybe we all share is extinction. Is that we can literally mess up what we have going for ourselves so far. So I think confronting the shadow eventually will become a responsibility for your species. Oh wow, check this out, guys. This quote is from Chuck Palahniuk, and he says Carl Jung called this shadow work. He said we never see others. Instead, we see only aspects of ourselves that fall over them. Shadows, projections, are associations. So I guess the same way the shadow is using the way Chuck Palahniuk is seeing Carl Jung use the shadow. I think it's the way I see that there's the inner realms. I kind of simplified. For me, it's not like there's a heaven or hell. There's just an object-subject balance of perception. And then there's energy being conscious of itself. That means when you realize you're being conscious in existence in an instant, there's a bliss. There's the bliss of allowance. That's why love is like how the inner realms were actually seen and saw the outer realms. So, anyways, guys. I think Carl Jung is like, all right. But here, we'll say one question. The unknown is everything each person has their back to. Do you see the self? Do you see the person who's drawn this picture of the four major Jungian archetypes? The self is at a door, and behind the door of the self is empty. That is the true unknown. That is the evolution of all knowledge. To see what the true self saw before it thought it was false. You know, to see nature's value before a mechanical evaluation, you know. So thanks for listening, guys, and let's have a round of applause for Carl Jung making an entrance, you know. Alright, I'm gonna get rid of the picture now, you know. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. And the relationship of listening with the invisible is the relationship with the intangibility of your imagination. Study your mind. Sometimes you can't tell apart your mind from your body if you're moving, if there's too much noise, right? So when I give these talks, there comes a point where I'm my attention is so preoccupied to staying loyal to the inner image that has arrived, that when I look at that inner image, I don't even see myself as a self and even the world. It's like it's a state where the self and the world are bowing to I would say unknown novelty. The unknown is in some sense where we are heading. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in, and much blessings and namaste. Listening is an art form, by the way. So much of life is being observed, and so much of it is after what you've observed, what you do. The nature of an ever-present mind could be beyond the language of conception, the language of form. The life could be beyond the form. Instead of life forms, we could be life beyond forms. So anyways, guys, blessings. Thank you.